Hampshire, January 1815. The frost clung to the windows of Winter's Manor like accusations made visible, each crystalline pattern a reminder that nature itself seemed to conspire in making the world cold and unforgiving. In the drawing room, Dorothea Jane Winters sat by the fire with her embroidery, her fingers moving with practiced precision, while her mind wandered to places far beyond the suffocating walls of her family home. The atmosphere was one of profound, crystalline isolation, mirroring the distance Dorothea felt from the life she was expected to live. At 26, Dorothea had long since accepted what mirrors and family alike had told her with unwavering consistency. She was not beautiful. Not in the way her sister Cecilia was beautiful, with golden curls that caught light like spun sunshine, and eyes the color of summer skies. Not in the way her younger sister Vanessa was beautiful, with raven hair that cascaded in perfect waves and a smile that could charm the sternest of gentlemen. No, Dorothea was plain. Her hair was an unremarkable brown, her eyes a muddy hazel that shifted between green and gray depending on the light, and her features were neither delicate nor striking. She had learned over 26 years to make herself small, to speak when spoken to exist in the margins of a family that valued beauty above all else. The drawing room door burst open with such force that Dorothea startled, pricking her finger with the embroidery needle. A single drop of blood appeared on the white linen she had been working on for weeks, bright and defiant. "Mama says you must come to dinner tonight," Cecilia announced, sweeping into the room in a gown of pale blue silk that complemented her coloring perfectly. "We have important guests." Dorothea carefully placed the embroidery aside, pressing the prick of her finger against a fine handkerchief. "I had planned to take dinner in my room," she said quietly. "I am not feeling particularly well." Vanessa appeared behind Cecilia, her expression one of barely concealed amusement. "Oh, but you simply must attend," she said, her voice laced with false sweetness. "Lord Dalton will be joining us, and you know how Papa values his good opinion." Lord Marcus Dalton was her father's longtime friend, a man of considerable influence in Hampshire society, whose wealth had been built on the suffering of tenant farmers, and whose cruelty was matched only by his ambition. Dorothea had learned to avoid him whenever possible, as his gaze always made her feel as though she were being appraised like livestock at market. "Very well," Dorothea replied, knowing that to refuse would bring her mother's wrath upon her head. "I shall attend." Cecilia smirked. "Do try to make yourself presentable, sister dear. It would not do to embarrass the family in front of such distinguished company." The two sisters departed in a rustle of silk and an air of high satisfaction, leaving Dorothea alone with the fading light and the knowledge that the evening ahead would bring nothing but discomfort. At precisely 7 o'clock that evening, Dorothea descended the stairs in her best gown, a simple affair of gray silk that had been her mother's 10 years prior and had been altered to fit Dorothea's slightly taller frame. She could hear laughter from the dining room, the kind of easy conversation that flowed when people felt themselves among equals. The footman announced her entrance with barely concealed disdain. "Miss Dorothea Winters." The conversation ceased immediately. Her mother, Lady Beatrice Winters, looked up from her place at the table with an expression of mild irritation, as though Dorothea's presence was an unexpected inconvenience. Her father, Lord Edmund Winters, barely glanced in her direction before returning his attention to Lord Dalton. "Ah, the middle daughter," Lord Dalton said, his eyes raking over Dorothea with undisguised assessment. "I had nearly forgotten your existence, Miss Winters. You make yourself so scarce." Dorothea curtsied properly and took her seat at the far end of the table, between her sisters, who immediately angled their bodies away from her as though even physical proximity to plainness might prove contagious. The first course was served, and conversation resumed its previous flow. Lord Dalton held forth on matters of politics and society, his voice filling the room with the confidence of a man who had never been contradicted. Dorothea ate in silence, grateful to be ignored. It was during the fish course that the topic turned to matters of the marriage market. "Have you heard the latest news from Derbyshire?" Lord Dalton asked, leaning back in his chair with the satisfied air of a man about to impart valuable information. The Duke of Langford has announced his intention to remarry. Lady Beatrice's eyes lit up with immediate interest. Sebastian Beaumont? But his poor wife has been dead barely 3 years. Precisely the appropriate mourning period, Lord Dalton replied, and he is in desperate need of an heir. The dukedom requires it. I am told he will be hosting a winter ball at Langford House next month, and that he will be receiving proposals of marriage from the finest families in England. Cecilia and Vanessa exchanged excited glances. Dorothea continued eating her fish. The Duke is known to be most particular, Lady Beatrice said thoughtfully. His first wife had shone as a diamond of the first water. Lady Caroline Fitzwilliam, daughter of the Earl of Ashburn. Such beauty and grace. Indeed, Lord Dalton agreed. Which is why the competition shall be fierce. Already, I am told, portraits have been sent from families as far north as Scotland and as far west as Wales. Every mother with an eligible daughter dreams of seeing her become the next Duchess of Langford. Lord Edmund cleared his throat. We should send portraits of our daughters, he said, glancing at Cecilia and Vanessa with obvious pride. Either would make a stunning duchess. Oh, Papa, Cecilia exclaimed, feigning modesty while her eyes shone with ambition. Do you truly think I might be considered? Why not? Lord Edmund replied. You are beautiful, accomplished, and of good family. Any duke would be fortunate to have you. It was then that Lord Dalton laughed, a sound that carried cruelty in its depths. Why not send all 3 daughters, he said, his eyes glinting with malice as they settled on Dorothea. A gesture of abundance, shall we say? The table fell silent. Dorothea felt her cheeks burn as every eye turned toward her. Marcus, really? Lady Beatrice said, though there was amusement in her voice rather than reproach. That would be most unkind. Would it? Lord Dalton persisted, warming to his theme. Think of it, Edmund. The Duke of Langford is known to have a rather dry sense of humor. What if we sent not portraits, but the girls themselves? Cecilia and Vanessa to dazzle, and Dorothea to provide contrast. The Duke might find it amusing. Vanessa giggled behind her napkin. Cecilia pretended to be scandalized, but could not quite hide her smile. Lord Edmund stroked his chin thoughtfully, as though actually considering the suggestion. It would certainly be memorable, he mused. Dorothea set down her fork carefully, maintaining a rigid posture beneath the table. Forgive me, she said quietly, but I believe I am developing a headache. May I be excused? Nonsense, her mother said sharply. You will remain seated. We are discussing family matters. Lord Dalton leaned forward, his expression one of mock concern. But truly, Miss Dorothea, would it not benefit you to attend such an event? At 26, your prospects grow dimmer with each passing season. Perhaps the Duke might take pity. The words struck like physical blows. Dorothea lifted her chin, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. I have no desire to attend a ball where I am not wanted, she said evenly. Oh, but you are wanted, Lord Dalton insisted. As a point of comparison, every diamond needs a setting after all, and what better setting than a plain sister to make the beautiful ones shine all the brighter? The cruelty was so naked, so deliberate, that even Lady Beatrice shifted uncomfortably. But Lord Edmund, weak as ever in the face of his friend's influence, nodded slowly. It is not without merit, he said. We could present it as a gesture of confidence. 3 daughters, each with her own qualities. The Duke might indeed find it refreshing. I will not go, Dorothea said, her voice stronger now. You cannot force me to participate in my own humiliation. Lord Dalton's smile widened. Can they not? My dear Miss Winters, you live under your father's roof, eat his food, wear gowns purchased with his money. I believe he can require whatever he wishes of you. Lord Edmund nodded, his decision made. You will attend the ball, Dorothea. You will represent this family with dignity, and you will do as you are bid." Dorothea rose from her seat, her meal forgotten. "Then I shall attend," she said quietly. "But know this. When I am humiliated before the entire nobility of England, the shame will fall not only upon me, but upon all of you." She left the dining room without being dismissed, half expecting her father to call her back. He did not. Behind her, she could hear Lord Dalton's laughter and her sister's excited chatter about gowns and jewels and the prospect of becoming a duchess. In her small room on the third floor, Dorothea sat by the window and looked out at the frozen grounds of Winter's Manor. The moon cast silver light across the snow, beautiful and cold, and utterly indifferent to human suffering. For the first time in her life, she allowed herself to cry. Not for what she was, but for what she would never be allowed to be. Not beautiful, not valued, not loved. The weeks that followed passed in a blur of preparation that felt more like marching toward execution than anticipation of a ball. Cecilia and Vanessa were fitted for elaborate gowns in the latest London fashion, creations of silk and lace that cost more than many families saw in a year. Dorothea was given an altered gown that had belonged to a distant cousin, a serviceable dress of ivory muslin that did nothing to flatter her figure. Her mother supervised the preparations with military precision, drilling her daughters on proper conduct and conversation. Cecilia practiced her curtsy until it was flawless. Vanessa rehearsed witty remarks until they sounded spontaneous. Dorothea was instructed to remain quiet and unobtrusive. "Remember," Lady Beatrice told Dorothea the night before their departure, "you are there to make your sisters shine. Do not draw attention to yourself. Do not speak unless spoken to. And for heaven's sake, try not to look quite so miserable. It reflects poorly on the family." The journey to Derbyshire took 3 days in bitter winter weather. They traveled in the family coach, Dorothea squeezed between trunks and hat boxes, while her sisters occupied the comfortable seats. At night, they stayed in coaching inns where Cecilia and Vanessa shared the best room, while Dorothea slept in a tiny chamber that smelled of mildew and mice. On the afternoon of the 4th day, they arrived at Langford House. Dorothea had heard descriptions of great estates, had read about them in books, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of the Duke of Langford's ancestral home. It rose from the Derbyshire landscape like something from a fairy tale, all honey-colored stone and soaring towers, with windows that caught the winter sun and threw it back in brilliant shards of light. Carriages, each more elegant than the last, filled the circular drive. Ladies in furs and velvets descended from coaches, their laughter carrying on the cold air. Gentlemen in immaculate evening dress offered their arms, their faces bright with anticipation. "Remember," her mother hissed, as their carriage door was opened by a footman in ducal livery. "Behave yourself." They were shown into an entrance hall that defied description. Marble floors reflected the light of 1,000 candles held in crystal chandeliers. Tapestries depicting hunting scenes covered walls that soared 3 stories high. A grand staircase curved upward in sweeping elegance, its balustrade carved from dark wood that gleamed with polish. Everywhere Dorothea looked, she saw beauty. Beautiful people in beautiful clothes, moving through beautiful spaces with the easy confidence of those who had never known anything else. A major domo in severe black approached them. "The Winters family of Hampshire," Lady Beatrice announced. "We are here at the invitation of His Grace." The major domo consulted a list. His eyebrows rose slightly. "Indeed, you are expected. Please follow me to the ballroom." They walked through corridors hung with portraits of Beaumont ancestors, men and women who stared down from their frames with expressions ranging from stern to severe. Dorothea felt their painted eyes following her, judging her, finding her wanting. The ballroom was a vision of winter splendor. White roses and silver ribbons decorated every surface. Musicians played from a raised gallery, their music floating over the assembled company like a benediction. Ladies in gowns of every color moved across the polished floor, their jewels catching the light. and in the center of it all stood the Duke of Langford. Sebastian Charles Beaumont was tall, perhaps 6 feet in height, with dark hair silvered at the temples and eyes of such piercing gray that they seemed to see through all pretense. He wore evening dress of severe black and white, his cravat tied in a style so perfect it might have been carved from marble. His face was handsome in the way that classical statues are handsome, all strong lines and aristocratic bones. He was, Dorothea realized with sinking certainty, the most intimidating man she had ever seen. "The Winters family of Hampshire," the major domo announced in a voice that carried across the ballroom. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Dorothea felt hundreds of eyes assess her family with the practiced precision of the ton. The Duke approached, his expression one of polite interest. He bowed to Lady Beatrice with perfect courtesy. "Madam, you honor my house with your presence." "Your Grace," Lady Beatrice replied, executing a flawless curtsy. "May I present my daughters, Miss Cecilia Winters, Miss Vanessa Winters, and Miss Dorothea Winters." Each sister curtsied in turn. Cecilia's curtsy was poetry in motion, her golden curls catching the candlelight. Vanessa's curtsy was grace itself, her dark beauty a perfect contrast to her sister's fairness. Dorothea's curtsy was technically correct, but utterly unremarkable. The Duke's gaze moved over all 3 sisters with the detached assessment of a man inspecting horseflesh. It lingered on Cecilia, as gazes always did, moved to Vanessa with appreciation, then settled on Dorothea with an expression she could not quite read. "3 daughters," he said quietly. "How unusual." Before anyone could respond, a voice cut through the polite murmur of the ballroom. "Your Grace, surely you recognize strategic positioning when you see it?" Lord Dalton appeared at the Duke's elbow, his smile sharp as a blade. He had arrived earlier, Dorothea realized, and had been waiting for this moment. "Lord Dalton," the Duke said, his tone cooling perceptibly, "I was not aware you were acquainted with the Winters family." "Old friends," Lord Dalton replied smoothly. "In fact, it was at my suggestion that they brought all 3 daughters. I thought you might appreciate the gesture. After all, variety is the very spice of life, is it not?" The Duke's gray eyes flickered with something that might have been annoyance. "Indeed. Though one must admire Lord Edmund's confidence," Lord Dalton continued, his voice pitched to Carrie, "to bring not only his diamonds, but also his plain stone. It demonstrates a certain democratic spirit, does it not?" Laughter rippled through the nearby guests. Dorothea felt her face burn with humiliation. Cecilia and Vanessa stood frozen, uncertain whether to be flattered or offended. Lady Beatrice's smile became brittle. The Duke's expression, however, turned to stone. "I beg your pardon, Lord Dalton?" "Oh, no offense intended, Your Grace. I merely meant to observe that Miss Cecilia and Miss Vanessa are clearly diamonds of the first water, while Miss Dorothea provides an interesting contrast. Surely you can appreciate the comparison." The silence that followed was absolute. Dorothea could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the weight of every stare in the ballroom. This was the moment Lord Dalton had orchestrated. This was the joke reaching its punchline. She lifted her chin and looked directly at the Duke of Langford. If she was to be humiliated, she would face it with what dignity she could muster. "Forgive me, Your Grace," she said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "I was brought here as an amusement. My family believed that my lack of beauty might serve as entertainment for you and your guests. I apologize for wasting your valuable time and for any embarrassment my presence has caused." She curtsied again, deep and proper, then turned to leave the ballroom. "Miss Winters." The Duke's voice stopped her mid-stride. She turned back slowly, expecting dismissal or further cruelty. Instead, the Duke of Langford extended his hand toward her. "Would you do me the honor of this dance?" The ballroom erupted in whispers. Lord Dalton's face went pale. Lady Beatrice gasped. Cecilia and Vanessa stood frozen in shock. Dorothea stared at the Duke's outstretched hand as though it were a serpent. Your Grace, I do not understand. It is a simple question, Miss Winters. Will you dance with me? But surely you would prefer to dance with one of my sisters. They are far more accomplished, far more beautiful, far more suitable for a man of your position. The Duke's expression softened almost imperceptibly. I did not ask your sisters, Miss Winters. I asked you. Unless, of course, you find the prospect of dancing with me so distasteful that you must refuse? Dorothea realized with sudden clarity that she was being offered a choice. To accept would invite more whispers, more ridicule. To refuse would be an insult to the Duke himself. She placed her hand in his. I would be honored, Your Grace. His hand closed around hers with surprising gentleness, and he led her onto the dance floor. The musicians, reading the room with practiced skill, struck up a waltz. As they took their positions, Dorothea could feel every eye in the ballroom fixed upon them. The Duke's hand settled at her waist, proper but firm, and as the music swelled, they began to dance. He was an excellent dancer, moving with the kind of unconscious grace that came from years of practice and natural athleticism. Dorothea focused on following his lead, terrified of making a misstep that would add to her humiliation. You dance well, the Duke observed after they had completed the first turn around the floor. Thank you, Your Grace. My governess was most insistent upon proper instruction. Yet you seem surprised that I asked you. Dorothea met his gray eyes directly. Forgive my bluntness, Your Grace, but yes, I am surprised. Surely you have better options for a dance partner. Better? His eyebrow rose slightly. By what measure? By every measure that society values. Beauty, charm, family connections of greater significance. I am none of those things. You are honest, the Duke said quietly. That is rarer than you might imagine. They danced in silence for several moments, moving through the patterns of the waltz with increasing ease. Dorothea found herself relaxing slightly, though she remained acutely aware of the whispers that followed them around the floor. May I ask you a question, Miss Winters? Of course, Your Grace. Did you come here of your own volition? The question was unexpected, its directness cutting through all social pretense. Dorothea considered lying, then remembered what he had said about honesty. No, she admitted. I came because my father commanded it. To refuse would have brought consequences I was not prepared to face. So you are neither a fool nor a coward, merely a daughter trapped by the circumstances of your birth and the cruelty of those who should protect you. The accuracy of his assessment struck Dorothea like a physical blow. She stumbled slightly, and his hand at her waist tightened, steadying her. Forgive me, she whispered. I am not accustomed to being seen clearly. Then those around you are blind, Miss Winters. A condition all too common among the ton. The waltz ended. The Duke bowed, Dorothea curtsied, and he escorted her back to where her mother stood with barely concealed shock. Thank you for the dance, Miss Winters, the Duke said formally. Then to Lady Beatrice, Madam, would you permit your daughter to remain at Langford House as a guest for the remainder of the week? My aunt, the Dowager Duchess, is in residence and finds herself in need of a companion for reading and conversation. I believe Miss Dorothea would suit admirably. Lady Beatrice managed a tight smile. Your Grace, we had planned to return to Hampshire on the morrow. Then you may return, and Miss Dorothea shall follow when the week concludes. Unless, of course, the young lady herself objects. All eyes turned to Dorothea. She knew what her mother expected her to say, knew what propriety demanded, knew that to accept was to step off the edge of everything familiar into complete unknown. I would be honored to assist the Dowager Duchess, Your Grace, if my mother gives permission. Lady Beatrice could not refuse without insulting the Duke. Lady Beatrice managed a tight smile. Of course. How kind of you to offer. The Duke inclined his head. Then it is settled. Miss Winters shall remain as my aunt's guest. I shall have her things brought to the East Wing chambers." He departed to greet other guests, leaving Dorothea standing with her family in stunned silence. "What have you done?" Cecilia hissed as soon as the Duke was out of earshot. "What she was told to do," Vanessa said bitterly. "Though I cannot fathom why the Duke showed her such attention. It makes no sense." Lady Beatrice gripped Dorothea's arm hard enough to bruise. "You will comport yourself with absolute propriety. You will not embarrass this family further, and you will remember your place." "Yes, Mama," Dorothea replied quietly. That night, alone in a bedchamber more luxurious than any she had ever occupied, Dorothea stood at the window and looked out over the moonlit grounds of Langford House. Below, the last carriages were departing, bearing away the families whose daughters had not been chosen for any particular attention. She did not understand what had happened, did not know why the Duke had singled her out for that waltz, or why he had invented a need for her to remain at his estate. But for the first time in years, Dorothea felt something stirring in her chest that might have been hope. The week that followed passed like a dream from which Dorothea feared she might wake at any moment. The Dowager Duchess of Langford, a formidable woman of 73 with silver hair and eyes as gray as her nephew's, proved to be nothing like Dorothea had expected. "So, you are the plain daughter," the Dowager said upon their first meeting in her private sitting room, a space filled with books and afternoon light. Dorothea curtsied. "Yes, Your Grace." The Dowager fixed Dorothea with a penetrating gaze, the expression one of testing her character and intellectual curiosity. "Good. I cannot abide beautiful women who think beauty entitles them to stupidity. Sit down, child. We shall see if my nephew's judgment was sound." The Dowager's companion, a timid woman named Mrs. Fletcher, brought tea while the Dowager assessed Dorothea with the same penetrating gaze her nephew had employed. "Can you read Greek?" the Dowager demanded without preamble. "Yes, Your Grace. My governess believed that classical education was not solely the province of boys." "Excellent. We shall read Euripides together. Can you play chess?" "Tolerably well, Your Grace." "We shall see. Can you manage conversation on topics beyond fashion and gossip?" "I believe so, Your Grace." The Dowager's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Then you shall do very well indeed. My nephew was correct. You are precisely what I needed." Over the following days, Dorothea fell into a routine that felt almost magical in its simplicity. She breakfasted in her chamber, then joined the Dowager for reading and conversation. They discussed philosophy and politics, literature and history, debated points of Greek grammar, and the merits of various translations. The Dowager was brilliant and demanding, but never cruel. When Dorothea made an error, she was corrected with patience. When she offered an insight, she was praised with genuine warmth. "You have a mind, child," the Dowager said one afternoon as they sat together in the conservatory, surrounded by winter roses. "It is a tragedy that your family has failed to recognize its value." "They recognize the value of beauty, Your Grace. That is the currency of the marriage market." The marriage market. Contempt laced the Dowager's voice. What a vulgar phrase for what should be the meeting of two souls, though I suppose in most cases it is accurate enough. It was during these quiet afternoons that Dorothea began to see more of the Duke himself. He would join them for tea, sitting quietly while his aunt dominated conversation, occasionally offering observations that revealed a mind as sharp as the Dowager's own. Dorothea learned that he was 32, that he had been educated at Cambridge, that he spoke 4 languages fluently and had traveled extensively through Europe before his father's death, had called him home to assume the dukedom at the age of 26. She learned that his first wife, the beautiful Lady Caroline, had died in childbirth, along with their son 3 years prior, and that the loss had nearly broken him. He was different before, the Dowager told Dorothea one evening when the Duke had departed to attend to estate business. Lighter, more given to laughter. Caroline's death changed him into what you see now, serious, distant, wary of connection. He must have loved her very much, Dorothea said quietly. He did, though whether she loved him with equal depth, I could never quite determine. Caroline was beautiful and accomplished, but she was also conventional. She wanted the title, the position, the admiration of society. I am not certain she ever truly saw Sebastian for who he was beneath the dukedom. Dorothea thought about this conversation often in the days that followed. She watched the Duke when he was not aware of her attention, saw the way his face softened when he spoke to the Dowager, the way his hands gentled when he handled his aunt's favorite books, the way he listened with complete attention to even the most mundane remarks. He was, she realized, desperately lonely. One afternoon, she encountered him in the library, a cavernous room that spanned 2 floors and held thousands of volumes. He stood by the window, a book in his hands, his expression distant. "Forgive me, Your Grace," Dorothea said, preparing to withdraw. "I did not mean to intrude." "You are not intruding, Miss Winters. This library exists to be used. What brings you here?" "Your aunt mentioned a particular translation of Homer that she wished to consult. I offered to retrieve it." "Ah, the Palmer translation. It will be on the 3rd shelf from the top, section devoted to Greek classics. Shall I fetch it for you?" "I can manage, Your Grace, but thank you." She moved to the appropriate section and reached for the volume, only to find it just beyond her grasp. Before she could fetch the library ladder, the Duke appeared at her side and retrieved the book with ease. "Thank you," Dorothea said, accepting the volume. Their hands brushed in the exchange, and she felt an unexpected warmth spread through her fingers. "Miss Winters, may I ask you a somewhat impertinent question?" "Of course, Your Grace." "Are you happy here? At Langford House, I mean, with my aunt?" The question surprised her. "Very happy, Your Grace. More happy than I can remember being in many years." "Good." He paused, seeming to weigh his words carefully. "And if I were to ask you to remain beyond the week originally agreed upon, what would you say?" Dorothea's heart began to beat faster. "I would say that I must consult my family, Your Grace. They will have expectations." "I have written to your father requesting permission for you to remain as my aunt's permanent companion. He has agreed in exchange for an agreeable settlement that benefits your family." The warmth that had spread through her at his touch turned to ice. "I see. So I am to be purchased." "That is not how I would characterize the arrangement, Miss Winters." "How would you characterize it, Your Grace?" "My father has sold me into service because I am of no value to him otherwise." The Duke's expression tightened. "You do yourself and me a disservice with that interpretation. I am offering you a position of respect and comfort with duties that suit your considerable talents. Your father receives compensation for the loss of your presence in his household. It is a business arrangement that benefits all parties. Except that I was not consulted. Would you prefer to return to Hampshire, to resume your life there, overlooked and undervalued?" The question hung in the air between them. Dorothea clutched the Homer translation against her chest, her mind racing. He was right, of course. Hampshire held nothing for her but more years of being invisible, more family dinners where she was the object of cruel jokes, more nights alone wondering if this was all her life would ever be. But to stay here, purchased like a commodity, however prettily the transaction was dressed up in language of companionship and position? Could she accept that? "I will stay," she said finally, "but not because I was bought. I will stay because your aunt has shown me more kindness in 1 week than my family has shown me in 26 years. I will stay because this library holds more genuine conversation than I have found anywhere else. I will stay because for the first time in my life, I feel as though my mind is valued as much as my sister's faces." Something shifted in the Duke's expression. "Then stay for those reasons, Miss Winters, and know that you are valued here in ways that have nothing to do with financial arrangements." He departed the library, leaving Dorothea alone with the scent of old books and the unsettling sensation that her reality had fractured in ways she could not yet fully comprehend. The arrangement was formalized within a fortnight. Dorothea's belongings were sent from Hampshire, a pitifully small collection of gowns and books that filled only 2 trunks. Her mother sent a brief letter informing her that Cecilia had received an offer from the son of a viscount, and that Vanessa was being courted by no fewer than 3 eligible gentlemen. There was no inquiry about Dorothea's well-being, no expression of maternal concern, just a cold recitation of family news followed by a reminder to comport herself appropriately and bring no shame upon the Winters name. Dorothea read the letter once, then burned it in a small fire in her room's grate and watched the ash scatter. Spring arrived gradually in Derbyshire, transforming the landscape from winter white to verdant green. The dowager's health improved with the warming weather, and she began taking daily walks through the gardens with Dorothea at her side. It was during one of these walks that they encountered the Duke riding across the grounds on a magnificent bay stallion. He dismounted with easy grace and fell into step beside them. "You look well, Aunt," he observed. "I am well, thanks to excellent companionship and the return of pleasant weather. Miss Winters and I were just discussing Plato's Republic." "Indeed, and what conclusion have you reached?" Dorothea, who had learned over weeks of living at Langford House that the Duke genuinely welcomed intellectual conversation, spoke up. "That the ideal republic Plato describes is impossible in practice because it requires a philosopher king who does not exist and citizens who willingly suppress their own natures for the common good." "A cynical view, Miss Winters." "A realistic one, Your Grace. Human nature being what it is, any attempt to force people into predetermined roles, regardless of individual talent or inclination, inevitably leads to suffering." The Duke's eyebrow rose. "You speak from personal experience, I take it?" "I speak from observation. Society demands that women be ornamental rather than useful, that beauty matter more than intelligence, that conformity be valued above originality. Those who fail to meet these arbitrary standards are deemed worthless, regardless of their actual qualities. And yet here you stand, Miss Winters, valued by my aunt and welcomed in my home despite your refusal to conform to society's narrow expectations. Perhaps there is hope for us all." Dorothea felt heat rise to her cheeks. "You are kind to say so, Your Grace." "I am not kind, Miss Winters. I am merely honest. It is a quality I find we share." The dowager smiled knowingly and excused herself, claiming fatigue, though her eyes sparkled with amusement. "I shall rest in the Rose Garden Pavilion. You two continue your walk." They walked in silence for several minutes, following a path that wound through beds of early roses just beginning to bloom. The air smelled of earth and growth and possibility. "May I confess something to you, Miss Winters?" "Of course, Your Grace." "That first night when I asked you to dance, it was not an act of kindness. It was an act of anger." Dorothea looked at him in surprise. "Anger, Your Grace?" "I was angry at Lord Dalton for his cruelty, angry at your family for their callousness, angry at a society that would use a young woman as the butt of a joke simply because she did not meet some arbitrary standard of beauty." He paused, his jaw tight. "But more than that, I was angry at myself." "I do not understand." "I was angry because I saw in you a reflection of what I had become. Someone going through the motions of life, existing rather than living, accepting the judgment of others rather than asserting their own value." He turned to face her fully. "When you stood in that ballroom and told me with such dignity that you had been brought there as an amusement, you showed more courage than I had shown in 3 years of hiding behind my grief." Dorothea found she could barely breathe. "Your Grace, I do not know what to say." "Say nothing. Just know that having you here, watching you come alive in conversation with my aunt, seeing you discover the library and the gardens and take joy in simple pleasures, has reminded me that life continues, that there is value in connection, that not all endings must be tragic." He offered his arm, and she took it, feeling the solid warmth of him through the fabric of his coat. They walked back to the house in companionable silence, and Dorothea wondered if perhaps, just perhaps, her life was becoming something other than what she had resigned herself to accepting. But as spring deepened into early summer, storm clouds were gathering on the horizon. Lord Marcus Dalton had not forgotten the humiliation of being rebuked by the Duke of Langford at the winter ball. He had not forgotten that his cruel joke had backfired, that the plain daughter he had used for amusement was now residing at Langford House as a valued companion to the Dowager Duchess. And he had not forgotten that he had debts to pay and ambitions to fulfill. His niece, Lady Isabel Dalton, was a beauty of the first water and the daughter of his late brother, a man who had married well and left a considerable fortune. Lady Isabel was also 20 years old, accomplished, and desperate to become a duchess. Dalton had been cultivating a match between Isabel and the Duke of Langford for months before the winter ball. The Duke's continued bachelorhood represented not just a lost opportunity, but a potential financial disaster for Dalton, who had borrowed heavily against the expectation of favorable family connections. The presence of Dorothea Winters in the Duke's household threatened everything. Dalton began his campaign subtly. He wrote to Lord Edmund Winters, reminding him of old debts and suggesting that perhaps his middle daughter's prolonged residence at Langford House was not entirely proper. He hinted that people were beginning to talk, that reputations might be damaged. Lord Edmund, weak and easily manipulated, grew concerned. He wrote to Dorothea demanding that she return home immediately. Dorothea showed the letter to the Dowager, who snorted in contempt. "Your father is a fool being played by a knave. We shall ignore this entirely." But 3 days later, a second letter arrived, this time threatening to come to Langford House personally and remove Dorothea by force if she did not comply. The Duke was informed. His response was immediate and decisive. "I shall write to your father myself and make clear that you are here as an honored guest and employee of this household. He has no authority to command your return." But before the Duke's letter could be sent, disaster struck from an unexpected quarter. A rumor began to circulate through the ton, whispered in drawing rooms and exchanged in carefully worded letters. It was said that Lord Edmund Winters had defaulted on significant gambling debts, that he owed money to half the gentlemen's clubs in London, that his honor was in question. The source of these rumors could not be traced, but their effect was immediate and devastating. Lord Edmund found himself cut by former friends, his credit withdrawn, his name mentioned only with disdain. And because honor was a family matter, the scandal touched everyone who bore the Winters name, including Dorothea. The Duke's Council of Advisors, a group of elderly gentlemen who managed the business affairs of the dukedom, requested an urgent meeting. They gathered in the Duke's study, their faces grave. "Your Grace," began Lord Hartley, the senior counselor, "we must address a delicate matter. The rumors surrounding Lord Winters and his alleged debts have created a situation that impacts this household." "How so?" the Duke asked, though Dorothea, standing quietly in the corner where she had been transcribing correspondence, already knew where this was leading. "Miss Dorothea Winters resides here under your protection. Her continued presence associates your name and your aunt's name with scandal. We must ask that you terminate her employment and send her away from Langford House immediately." The Duke's expression turned to stone. "You would have me dismiss an innocent woman because of unproven accusations against her father? The accusations may be unproven, but the damage to reputation is real, Your Grace. Already there is talk. Some say you have been bewitched. Others suggest impropriety. This cannot continue." Dorothea set down her pen carefully. "Your Grace, if I may speak?" The counselors looked affronted that she should dare address them, but the Duke nodded. "Please, Miss Winters." "Gentlemen, I appreciate your concern for His Grace's reputation. I would never wish to bring scandal to this household or to the Dowager Duchess, who has shown me nothing but kindness." She took a deep breath. "I will depart Langford House immediately. I will return to Hampshire and face whatever consequences await me there." "No," the Duke said flatly. "Your Grace, I must insist," Lord Hartley began. "And I must insist that you remember your place, Lord Hartley. You advise me on business matters. You do not dictate my personal decisions or the composition of my household." "But Your Grace, the scandal." "The scandal is manufactured nonsense, and I will not give it credence by capitulating to pressure. Miss Winters has done nothing wrong. She will remain at Langford House for as long as she chooses to stay." The councillors exchanged worried glances. Lord Hartley tried once more. "Your Grace, please consider. Lady Isabel Dalton represents an excellent match. Her uncle, Lord Dalton, has significant political influence. An alliance with that family would benefit the dukedom immensely. But such an alliance cannot proceed while Miss Winters remains under your roof." Understanding dawned in the Duke's gray eyes. "I see. So this is about arranging my marriage to suit your business interests?" "We seek only the good of the dukedom, Your Grace." "Then trust my judgment when I tell you that the good of the dukedom does not require me to marry where I do not choose or to abandon those who have earned my respect and friendship." The Duke's voice was firm, resting on his own sense of integrity. Lord Hartley's expression hardened. "Then we must respectfully inform you, Your Grace, that if you persist in this course, we cannot in good conscience continue to serve as your advisors. The damage to the dukedom's reputation will be too severe." "Then I accept your resignation, Lord Hartley, and those of any other councillors who share your views." 5 of the 7 councillors rose and departed, their faces set in disapproval. The 2 who remained, younger men who had joined the council more recently, looked shaken but stayed seated. When the door closed behind the departing councillors, the Duke turned to Dorothea. "I apologize that you were subjected to that affront." Dorothea stood, her hands trembling. "Your Grace, this is madness. You cannot lose your entire council over me. I am not worth such sacrifice." The Duke focused his gaze, ensuring she understood his meaning. "That is where you are wrong, Miss Winters. You are worth precisely that sacrifice and more. But the rumors about my father are almost certainly false, and even if they were true, they say nothing about your character or your value." Dorothea felt tears prick her eyes. "You do not understand. My presence here damages you. The tongue will whisper, your position will be weakened. And for what? For a plain spinster who contributes nothing of significance?" The Duke crossed the room in 3 strides and captured her hands. "You contribute more than you know, Dorothea. You have brought life back to this house. You have given my aunt joy in her final years. And you have reminded me that there is more to existence than duty and grief." It was the first time he had used her given name. The sound of it on his lips did something strange to her heart. "I cannot ask you to sacrifice so much," she whispered. "You are not asking. I am choosing. There is a difference." But even as he spoke, Dorothea knew that she could not allow him to destroy himself for her sake. She could not be the reason his council abandoned him, his reputation suffered, his political alliances crumbled. That night, she made her decision. She would leave Langford House, not because she was ordered to, but because staying would harm the man who had shown her the first genuine kindness she had known in years. She would slip away quietly, return to Hampshire, and face whatever awaited her there. It was the only way to protect him. She packed her few belongings in the dark hours before dawn, moving as silently as possible. She had written 2 letters, one to the Dowager thanking her for everything, one to the Duke trying to explain why she had to go. She was halfway down the servants' stairs when a voice stopped her. "Running away, Miss Winters? How disappointing." Dorothea spun to find the Duke standing in the corridor, fully dressed despite the early hour, his expression unreadable. "Your Grace, I did not mean to wake you." "I was not asleep. I have not slept well since yesterday's meeting." He gestured to her bag. "Going somewhere?" "Back to Hampshire, where I belong." "That is the second falsehood you have told in as many sentences. You did mean to leave without saying goodbye, and Hampshire is not where you belong." Dorothea set down her bag, suddenly too exhausted to maintain pretense. "What would you have me do, Your Grace? Stay here and watch as your life unravels because of me? Stay while the ton whispers and your reputation crumbles? I cannot do it. I will not be the instrument of your downfall, and I will not allow you to sacrifice yourself for my sake." He moved closer, his gray eyes intense in the dim corridor. "Dorothea, listen to me. The rumors about your father are fabrications, almost certainly engineered by Lord Dalton to force you from this house. Do you understand what that means? That he is cruel and manipulative. I already knew that. It means the accusations are false, which means they can be disproven." Dorothea looked up sharply. "How?" "By finding the truth, by discovering who actually owes the debts in question and exposing Dalton's deception." The Duke's expression hardened. "But I cannot do that if you run away. I need you to stay. I need you to trust me." "Why?" The question escaped before Dorothea could stop it. "Why does it matter so much to you whether I stay or go?" The Duke was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because in the months you have been here, you have become essential. Because I find myself thinking of you when we are apart and seeking out your company when we are together. Because when I imagine the future, you are in it. Because somewhere between that first waltz and this moment, I have come to care for you in ways that have nothing to do with companion positions or household arrangements." Dorothea felt her breath catch. "Your Grace, I do not understand." "Then allow me to be perfectly clear. I am falling in love with you, Dorothea Winters, against all logic, against all expectation, against every plan I had made for my life. You, with your honesty and your intelligence, and your refusal to be diminished by the cruelty of others. You have awakened something in me I thought died with Caroline. And I will not lose you to manufactured scandal and the machinations of a man like Dalton." A sudden wave of vertigo swept over Dorothea. She gripped the banister to steady herself. "You cannot mean that. And why should I not? Because I am plain. Because I am nobody. Because there are 100 women more beautiful, more accomplished, more suitable to be a duchess. And yet I choose you." He captured her hands again, his grip firm and warm. "I choose the woman who reads Greek with my aunt and debates philosophy with passion. I choose the woman who discovered my library and treats every book like a treasure. I choose the woman who faced humiliation in a ballroom and responded with dignity. I choose you, Dorothea, if you will have me." Tears spilled down Dorothea's cheeks. "You are the Duke of Langford. You could have anyone." "I know, and I choose you." She looked into his eyes and saw truth there, plain and undeniable as sunrise. He meant every word. Against all probability, Sebastian Beaumont, Duke of Langford, was offering her not just his protection, but his heart. "I do not know how to be a duchess," she whispered. "Neither did I know how to be a duke when my father died. We shall learn together." He brushed away her tears with gentle fingers. "Stay, Dorothea. Stay and fight with me. Stay and let me prove that you are worth every sacrifice, every scandal, every whisper of the tongue. Stay and give us a chance to see what we might become together." Dorothea thought of all the years she had spent believing herself unworthy of love, all the times she had been told she was not enough. And then she thought of this man, this impossibly noble man, offering her everything she had never dared to dream possible. "I will stay," she said, "but only if you let me help prove my father's innocence. I will not hide while others fight my battles." The Duke smiled, an expression that softened the severe lines of his face. "I would expect nothing less." They stood together in the corridor as dawn broke through the windows, two people who had been shaped by loss and loneliness, finding unexpected hope in each other's company. The investigation into Lord Edmund's alleged debts took Dorothea and the Duke to London, where the financial records of the gentlemen's clubs were kept. The Duke's remaining counselors provided contacts and access, their initial skepticism giving way to genuine concern as the truth began to emerge. The search for the perpetrator required Dorothea to apply her analytical mind to the scattered and often confusing ledger entries, providing a key insight that narrowed the Duke's focus considerably. Lord Edmund had never gambled in his life. Every supposed debt was a fabrication, documented with forged signatures and false witnesses. And the trail led directly back to Lord Marcus Dalton, who had manufactured the entire scandal to force Dorothea from Langford House and clear the path for his niece, Lady Isabel. But Dalton had made one critical error. In his eagerness to create a convincing case, he had used the name of a clerk at White's who had actually died 6 months prior. When confronted with records supposedly signed by this dead man, the deception unraveled completely. The Duke convened an emergency meeting of his council, now supplemented by several peers of considerable influence. The evidence was presented. Lord Dalton was summoned. He arrived at Langford House in high spirits, clearly expecting vindication of his position. Instead, he found himself facing a room full of grim-faced nobles and incontrovertible proof of his fraud. "This is preposterous," Dalton blustered. "These documents are clearly forged." "Indeed they are," the Duke said coldly. "Forged by you, Lord Dalton, in an attempt to destroy an innocent man's reputation and manipulate my personal affairs. You have no proof. We have extensive proof. Signatures from dead men, dates that do not align, payments recorded in accounts that did not exist at the time. And most damningly, we have the testimony of 3 clerks willing to swear that you offered them money to create false records." Dalton's face went pale, then red. "You cannot do this. I have influence. I have connections." "Connections built on sand and lies," one of the other peers said flatly. "You are finished, Dalton. Socially, politically, financially. Consider yourself fortunate that His Grace has decided not to pursue criminal charges." "But my niece, your niece would do well to distance herself from you immediately," the Duke said. "As for any expectation of a match between Lady Isabel and myself, let me make this perfectly clear. I am not available for such arrangement, nor would I consider alliance with a family so thoroughly dishonored." Dalton turned to Dorothea, his expression ugly with rage. "This is your doing, you plain little nobody. You have bewitched him." "Enough." The Duke's voice cracked like a whip. "You will address Miss Winters with respect, or you will leave this house in irons. The choice is yours." Dalton chose to leave, but not before casting a look of pure hatred at Dorothea that made her shiver. When he was gone, the room collectively exhaled. The council members congratulated the Duke on his handling of the situation, expressed their relief that justice had been served, and quietly suggested that perhaps a union between the Duke and Miss Winters would be most appropriate given the circumstances. The Duke's smile was subtle, but genuine. "Your counsel is noted, gentlemen." That evening, after the various lords and councillors had departed and the house had settled into quiet, the Duke found Dorothea in the library where she had spent so many happy hours. "It is finished," he said simply. "Your father's name is cleared. Dalton is ruined, and you are safe." Dorothea set aside her book. "Thanks to you. Thanks to us. You were the one who insisted on investigating, who refused to simply accept the accusations as truth. Your faith in your father's character was vindicated." "My father who sold me to you like a commodity," Dorothea said quietly. "Let us not pretend he is a good man simply because he is not a gambler." The Duke sat beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "No, he is not a good man. But you, Dorothea, are a magnificent woman, and I hope you know that by now." "I am beginning to believe it," she admitted. Slowly. After 26 years of being told otherwise, it is difficult to change one's thinking. Then allow me to help you see yourself clearly. He took her hand. Dorothea Jane Winters, you are intelligent, courageous, kind, and beautiful. I am not beautiful. You are to me. Beauty is not merely a matter of features arranged in pleasing proportions. It is the light in someone's eyes when they speak of something they love. It is the courage to stand tall when the world tries to make you small. It is the capacity for kindness in the face of cruelty. By all these measures, you are the most beautiful woman I have ever known. Dorothea felt tears prick her eyes again. You see me through the lens of affection. I see you clearly for the first time in your life, and I am asking you to see yourself the same way. He paused, his gray eyes serious. I am asking you to marry me, Dorothea, not because scandal requires it, not because my counsel suggests it, but because I love you and cannot imagine my life without you in it. This was the moment Dorothea had never allowed herself to dream of. The moment when someone saw her completely, knew her fully, and chose her anyway. The moment when plain Dorothea Winters was offered everything she had been told she could never have. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you. The Duke's smile was radiant. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her, gentle and reverent, as though she were something precious that might break. When they finally drew apart, Dorothea laughed through her tears. The Tun will say you have gone mad. The Tun may comment as they wish. I concern myself with my own honor, not their gossip. I am marrying the woman I love, and that is all that matters. The wedding was planned for late spring, giving sufficient time for proper arrangements and for the scandal surrounding the Winters family to fully dissipate. The Dowager Duchess took immense pleasure in overseeing the preparations, insisting that Dorothea should have everything a duchess deserved. I always knew Sebastian would choose wisely when he finally made his selection, the Dowager told Dorothea during a fitting for her wedding gown. But I confess I did not imagine he would choose quite so well. I still fear I shall wake and find this all a dream, Dorothea admitted. Then allow me to pinch you and confirm it is reality. You are loved, child, deeply and genuinely loved. Accept it as your due. The days leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind of activity. Invitations were sent to the highest families in England. Langford House was prepared for celebrations that would last 3 days. And through it all, Dorothea and Sebastian grew closer, learning each other's minds and hearts with the careful attention of two people building something meant to last. Her family was invited, of course. Propriety demanded it. Lord Edmund and Lady Beatrice arrived with Cecilia and Vanessa 2 days before the ceremony. Their manner a peculiar mixture of obsequiousness toward the Duke and awkwardness toward Dorothea. Cecilia had married her Viscount, but found him disappointing, more interested in his hunting dogs than his wife. Vanessa had received several offers but accepted none, holding out for a Duke who never materialized. Both sisters looked at Dorothea with barely concealed envy and resentment. Lady Beatrice attempted to claim credit for Dorothea's success. I always knew you had potential, dear, she said with false warmth. I simply wanted you to develop your character before putting you forward. You wanted me to develop my invisibility, Dorothea corrected quietly. But I am grateful for it now. Being overlooked taught me to value substance over appearance. It taught me who I truly was beneath the judgments of others. So thank you, Mama, for the lessons you never intended to teach. Lady Beatrice had no response to that. Lord Edmund, for his part, seemed genuinely chastened by the scandal that had nearly destroyed him. He approached Dorothea privately on the eve of the wedding. I owe you an apology, he said stiffly, for years of neglect, for cruelty, for failing in my duty as a father. Dorothea studied the man who had given her life, but little else. I forgive you, Papa, not because you deserve forgiveness, but because I deserve peace. You have become something extraordinary, he said quietly, something I had no hand in creating. The Duke is a fortunate man. No, Papa, I am the fortunate one. He sees me, truly sees me. That is rarer than any title or fortune. Not a plain woman trying to hide her inadequacies, but a woman of substance and strength, about to embark on a new chapter of life. The chapel at Langford House was filled to capacity. Nobles from across England had come to witness the unlikely union of the Duke of Langford and the formerly scorned daughter of Lord Winters. The whispers had been abundant in the weeks leading up to the ceremony, but they had largely given way to acceptance and even approval once the truth about Lord Dalton's deception had spread through the ton. Dorothea walked down the aisle on her father's arm, past faces both familiar and strange, until she reached the altar where Sebastian waited. He looked magnificent in his formal attire, but it was the expression on his face that commanded her attention. Pure joy, undisguised love, complete certainty. The ceremony proceeded with traditional solemnity. When it came time for vows, Sebastian took her hands and spoke in a voice that carried to every corner of the chapel. Dorothea, you have taught me that true beauty lives not in mirrors, but in truth. You have shown me that courage comes not from strength, but from refusing to be diminished. You have reminded me that life continues, that love is possible, that choosing substance over appearance is the only choice that matters. I vow to see you always as you truly are. I vow to protect and cherish you. I vow to build a life with you based on honesty and respect and genuine partnership. This I swear before God and these witnesses. Dorothea's voice trembled as she made her own vows. Sebastian, the wedding day dawned. You have taught me that I am worthy of the kind of perfect spring morning. You have shown me that designed for new beginnings, even in cruel worlds. Dorothea stood in her chamber, you have given wearing me the a gown of ivory silk in my own value, that the dowager had commissioned from the finest modiste in London. I vow to challenge and support elegant. I vow to build a life with you rather than overwhelm. The principles we both hold dear. She looked at herself in the mirror. This I swear before God for the first time. Witnesses what Sebastian saw. The Archbishop pronounced them husband and wife. Sebastian kissed her gently, and the chapel erupted in applause. As they walked back down the aisle together, now Duke and Duchess of Langford, Dorothea caught sight of her sisters' faces. Cecilia looked wistful. Vanessa looked bitter. Lady Beatrice attempted to smile, though it did not reach her eyes. Dorothea felt not triumph, but a profound sense of liberation. She had escaped the prison of their judgment. She had found something they would spend their lives seeking, but never finding, because they looked for it in all the wrong places. The celebration lasted 3 days, as planned. The people of Derbyshire turned out in force, lining the streets to cheer their new Duchess. Dorothea had spent months visiting the villages near Langford House, had brought medicines to the sick and food to the hungry, had treated tenant farmers and their families with genuine respect and kindness. They loved her not because she was beautiful, but because she was good. And that love was returned 1,000-fold. On the third evening, as the last guests departed and the house finally fell quiet, Sebastian found Dorothea on the terrace overlooking the gardens. The spring air was soft and sweet, carrying the scent of roses just beginning to bloom. "Are you happy?" he asked, slipping his arms around her waist from behind. Dorothea leaned back against him, feeling safe and cherished and completely at peace. "More happy than I ever imagined possible." "No regrets?" "None. Though I confess I still sometimes wonder if I shall wake and find this all a dream." Sebastian turned her in his arms so they faced each other. "Then allow me to assure you once more that it is real. You are the Duchess of Langford. You are my wife. You are loved beyond measure, and you will never again be dismissed or diminished or treated as anything less than the extraordinary woman you are." Dorothea looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "They sent me to that ball as a jest," she said softly. "A cruel joke meant to humiliate." "And I made you my Duchess," Sebastian replied. "Because I recognized treasure when the world saw only worthlessness." "No," Dorothea corrected gently. You gave me space to recognize my own treasure. You gave me permission to believe in myself. That is the greater gift." They stood together on the terrace, two people who had been broken by loss and cruelty, now made whole by love and mutual respect. The journey ahead would not always be easy. There would be challenges and disappointments, joys and sorrows, the full complexity of life shared between two imperfect people. But they would face it together, seeing each other clearly, choosing each other daily, building something real and lasting from the ashes of what they had been before. In the distance, Dorothea could see the lights of the village, could imagine the families gathering for evening meals, the children being tucked into bed, the ordinary magic of lives being lived with purpose and connection. She thought of the girl she had been, sitting alone in that cold drawing room at Winter's Manor, believing herself unworthy of love or happiness. And she thought of the woman she had become, standing beside a man who saw her truly and loved her completely. The plain daughter had become a duchess, not through magic or transformation, but through the simple, profound act of being seen for who she truly was and chosen anyway. And in that seeing and choosing, she had found not just love, but liberation. Liberation from the cruel judgments that had defined her youth. Liberation into a life of purpose and partnership. Liberation into the radical belief that worth is inherent, not earned, and that every person deserves to be recognized for their unique value. This was the lesson she would teach her son. That beauty is not merely what meets the eye. That character matters more than appearance. That choosing kindness over cruelty, substance over surface, truth over pretense, is always the path worth taking. And that sometimes the greatest treasures are found in the places the world overlooks, waiting to be recognized by those with the wisdom to see clearly. Thank you for journeying with us through this tale of courage, love, and self-discovery. If you believe in stories where the overlooked find their worth and where genuine connection triumphs over cruel convention, please subscribe, like, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps us continue telling stories that celebrate the power of seeing beyond appearances and choosing love over expectation.